The crystal wine glass slipped from Natalie Brooks's trembling fingers and exploded against the marble floor of the Golden Terrace. Crimson wine spread across the white tiles like spilled blood, and the entire restaurant seemed to freeze. 70 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some amused, others disgusted. Natalie heard the laughter before she saw the faces. Sharp, cutting laughter from table 12, where 3 women in designer dresses pointed at her with manicured fingers. A life falling apart Natalie dropped to her knees, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. At 26 years old, she had imagined her life would look different. She had dreamed of finishing her business degree, maybe opening her own small cafe someday. Instead, here she was, scraping broken glass off the floor while Boston's wealthy elite mocked her from their tables. The Golden Terrace was supposed to be her salvation after her mother's medical bills had drained every penny of her savings. 3 months ago, she had been managing a small bookstore. Now she was barely managing to stay employed. The manager's warning, Vincent Torres, the floor manager, appeared beside her like a storm cloud. His perfectly pressed suit and slicked back hair made him look more like a politician than a restaurant manager. He grabbed her elbow and pulled her to her feet with more force than necessary. The other servers had already begun cleaning up the mess, their movements efficient and practiced. They had seen this before. Natalie was not the first server to crack under the pressure of the Golden Terrace. My office. Now. Vincent's voice was ice. Natalie followed him through the kitchen, past the line cooks who pretended not to notice, and into the cramped office that smelled of cigarettes and desperation. Vincent closed the door and turned to face her, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been pity. This is your 4th incident this month. Natalie, 4. Do you understand what that means for this establishment? We serve senators, business executives, celebrities. Our reputation depends on perfection. Begging for another chance. Natalie's voice came out smaller than she intended. I know, I'm sorry. My hands were wet from the water station and the glass just slipped. It won't happen again. Vincent leaned against his desk, rubbing his temples. That's what you said last week, and the week before that. I wanted to give you a chance because I knew about your mother's situation, but my compassion doesn't pay the bills or maintain our 5-star rating. The mention of her mother made Natalie's chest tighten. Her mother, who had raised her alone after her father left. Her mother, who was now fighting stage 3 cancer in a hospital bed across town. The medical treatments that insurance refused to cover. The experimental therapy that cost more than Natalie made in 6 months. Every dropped glass, every spilled drink, every mistake brought her closer to losing the income that kept her mother alive. Please, Natalie whispered. I need this job. I'll work double shifts. I'll take the worst sections. Just please don't fire me. Vincent sighed heavily. I'm not firing you, not yet. But this is your final warning, Natalie. One more mistake, just one, and I'll have no choice. The owner is visiting this week, and he has 0 tolerance for incompetence. The mysterious regular relief and dread washed over Natalie in equal measure. She nodded quickly, thanked Vincent, and escaped back to the dining room. The lunch rush was ending, and most tables had cleared out. Natalie busied herself with refilling water glasses and clearing plates, keeping her head down and her hands steady. She was wiping down table 7 when she noticed him again. Tom Harrison sat alone at his usual corner table, a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables in front of him. He had been coming to the Golden Terrace 3 times a week for the past month, always alone, always ordering modestly despite the restaurant's expensive menu. Unlike the other regulars who treated servers like furniture, Tom always made eye contact, always said please and thank you, always left a generous tip. Today, he was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. When their eyes met, he gave her a small, encouraging smile. Natalie felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. He had witnessed her humiliation, had heard the laughter. She wanted to disappear. An unexpected kindness. As Natalie approached to refill his water glass, Tom spoke quietly. Rough day? She forced a professional smile. Nothing I can't handle. I saw what happened. That could have been anyone. The floor near the water station is always slippery. I've noticed it before. Something about his tone made Natalie pause. He spoke with the careful observation of someone who paid attention to details most people missed. She studied him more closely. Tom appeared to be in his early 40s, with dark hair touched by gray at the temples. His clothes were nice but not flashy. A simple watch, no jewelry. He could have been a teacher, an accountant, or any middle-class professional enjoying a lunch break. "Thank you for saying that," Natalie said softly. "Not everyone has been so kind today." Tom's expression darkened slightly. "I noticed. Some people forget that servers are human beings with lives and struggles beyond this dining room. They see uniforms instead of people." His words struck something deep in Natalie's chest. She blinked back fresh tears. "I should get back to work. Of course. But Natalie," he had read her name tag, "don't let one bad moment define your worth. You're clearly trying your best in difficult circumstances. That matters more than a dropped glass. A glimmer of hope." As Natalie walked away, she felt lighter somehow. Tom Harrison's words had given her something she desperately needed: hope. She did not know why this stranger cared enough to offer comfort, but in that moment, it meant everything. The rest of her shift passed without incident. Natalie moved carefully, double-checking every tray, every glass, every step. When closing time finally arrived, exhaustion settled into her bones. As she removed her apron in the staff room, her phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Her mother was asking about her day. Natalie typed back a cheerful lie about everything being fine, then sat down heavily on the bench. Tomorrow she would return and face another shift walking on eggshells. Another day of wondering if one mistake would cost her everything. But tonight, she held on to the kindness of a stranger named Tom Harrison. A man who saw her as a person rather than a servant. A man whose quiet compassion had reminded her that she was more than her mistakes. Little did Natalie know that this mysterious customer held the power to change her life forever, and that his presence at the Golden Terrace was no accident at all. The next morning, Natalie woke to frantic text messages from her coworker, Jessica. "Owner visiting today. Vincent is losing his mind. Get here early." Natalie's stomach dropped. Thomas Westbrook, the billionaire owner of the Golden Terrace and 15 other luxury restaurants across the country, was known for his surprise inspections. Servers had been fired on the spot during his visits. Managers had been demoted. Entire kitchen staffs had been replaced. Natalie arrived 30 minutes before her shift, her hair perfectly styled, her uniform pressed and spotless. The restaurant buzzed with nervous energy. Vincent paced the dining room, adjusting flower arrangements and inspecting table settings with manic precision. The other servers moved like soldiers preparing for battle, their faces tight with anxiety. Tom's unexpected presence. The lunch service began with unusual tension. Every server triple-checked their orders. Every plate that left the kitchen was examined for perfection. Natalie took shallow breaths and focused on each task with laser precision. She was delivering a Caesar salad to table 4 when she spotted Tom Harrison entering the restaurant. Her heart lifted slightly at the sight of a friendly face. Tom smiled at her as the hostess seated him at his usual corner table. Natalie found herself grateful for his presence. Somehow, knowing he was there made her feel less alone in the pressure cooker atmosphere. She approached his table with a genuine smile, the first real one she had managed all day. "Welcome back," she said warmly. "The usual?" Tom shook his head. "Actually, I think I'll try something different today. What do you recommend?" Natalie noticed he was studying her face carefully, as if checking to make sure she was all right after yesterday's incident. The concern in his eyes made her throat tighten with emotion. "The seared salmon is excellent today. Chef Pierre prepared it with a lemon butter sauce. Perfect. I'll trust your judgment." The catastrophe strikes as Natalie turned to enter Tom's order. Disaster struck. Gregory Blackwell, a real estate mogul worth millions, stood up abruptly from table 9 just as Natalie passed with a full tray of drinks. She tried to stop, but momentum carried her forward. The tray tipped, and 6 glasses of iced tea cascaded directly onto Gregory's custom-tailored suit. The restaurant fell silent except for the sound of ice cubes hitting the floor. Gregory's face turned purple with rage. "You clumsy idiot! Do you have any idea what this suit costs? More than you make in a year, I guarantee it." Natalie stood frozen, tea dripping from the empty tray in her hands. This was it. Her final mistake, the one Vincent had warned her about. She could already feel her job slipping away, and with it, her mother's treatment, their apartment, everything. Other diners began whispering, some laughing behind their hands. A woman at table 6 called out loudly, "How does this place stay in business with such incompetent staff?" Another voice chimed in, "She should have been fired after yesterday's incident." The laughter grew louder, crueler. Natalie felt herself shrinking under the weight of their judgment and mockery. Vincent rushed over, his face pale. "Mr. Blackwell, I am profoundly sorry. Please allow us to cover your dry cleaning costs and provide you with a complimentary meal for a month." A month? I want her fired. Right now. In front of everyone. Gregory pointed at Natalie like she was something disgusting he had stepped in. Make an example of her incompetence. Tears finally spilled down Natalie's cheeks. She could not hold them back anymore. The humiliation, the fear, the exhaustion of fighting so hard and still failing, it all crashed over her at once. She opened her mouth to apologize, but no words came out. Tom's intervention. That won't be necessary. Tom Harrison's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. He had stood from his table and walked over to the scene, his expression calm but his eyes burning with intensity. The collision was clearly accidental. Mr. Blackwell stood up without looking. I witnessed the entire incident. Gregory turned his fury on Tom. And who are you to interfere? Another minimum wage nobody defending incompetence? Tom's smile was cold. Actually, I'm someone who believes in treating people with basic human decency. Something you seem to have forgotten despite your wealth. The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Vincent looked like he might faint. Several diners had pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. Gregory stepped closer to Tom, trying to use his height to intimidate. "You have no idea who you're talking to." "I know exactly who I'm talking to," Tom replied quietly. "Gregory Blackwell, real estate developer, 3 failed marriages, currently under investigation for housing code violations in your apartment complexes. A man who treats service workers like trash because it makes him feel powerful." The shift in power Gregory's face went from purple to white. "How do you know that?" Tom ignored the question and turned to Vincent. "I'd like to speak with you in private. Now." Vincent nodded mutely and led Tom toward the office, leaving Gregory sputtering in confusion and Natalie trembling in the middle of the dining room. Jessica rushed over and guided Natalie to the staff room, away from the staring crowd. "What just happened?" Natalie whispered, sinking onto the bench. "Who is Tom Harrison?" Jessica shook her head. "I don't know, but he just stood up to Gregory Blackwell. Nobody does that. Blackwell has enough money and connections to destroy people." Behind closed doors, in Vincent's office, the manager wrung his hands nervously. "Sir, I was about to handle the situation. I would have compensated Mr. Blackwell appropriately and dealt with Miss Brooks according to protocol." Tom leaned against the desk, his casual demeanor gone. When he spoke, his voice carried unmistakable authority. "Your protocol involves humiliating a hard-working employee in front of a crowd? Firing her to appease a bully? With all due respect, we have standards to maintain. Miss Brooks has had multiple incidents. The owner would never tolerate such incompetence." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Tell me, Vincent, what do you know about why Natalie Brooks took this job?" Vincent shifted uncomfortably. "I know her mother is ill. But personal circumstances don't excuse professional failures. Her mother has cancer. Stage 3. The treatments cost $18,000 per month. Insurance covers half. Natalie works here during the day and cleans office buildings at night to make up the difference. She sleeps 4 hours if she's lucky. And despite that exhaustion, she shows up every day with a smile and treats every customer with genuine warmth." Tom's voice grew harder. Meanwhile, Gregory Blackwell, who inherited his wealth and has never worked an honest day in his life, stands up without looking and blames a tired woman for his own carelessness. "And you were going to fire her to protect his ego." The truth emerges. Vincent's face had gone pale. "I didn't know all of that. But the owner's standards are very clear. Mr. Westbrook demands perfection." Tom stood up and walked to the window overlooking the dining room. He could see Natalie through the glass, sitting in the staff room with her head in her hands. His chest tightened at the sight. This was exactly why he did these visits, why he disguised himself and watched his restaurants from the inside. Let me tell you something about Thomas Westbrook, Tom said quietly. He built his restaurant empire from nothing. Started with a food cart 22 years ago. Worked 18-hour days. Slept in his car. He knows what it means to struggle. Vincent nodded impatiently. Yes, his story is legendary, but that was years ago. Now he expects excellence from everyone who works for him. Tom turned to face the manager. Excellence, yes, but not at the expense of compassion. Natalie Brooks is excellent. She's fighting through circumstances that would break most people, and she still shows up and gives everything she has. That's the kind of employee any business should treasure. A fateful decision. So you're saying I shouldn't fire her? Vincent asked carefully. I'm saying you should promote her. Put her through the advanced training program. She has qualities that can't be taught: empathy, resilience, genuine care for others. Those are rare. Technical skills can be learned. Vincent stared at Tom in confusion. I don't understand. Why do you care so much about one server? And how do you know so much about Mr. Westbrook's expectations? Tom smiled slightly and pulled out his phone. He typed quickly and showed Vincent the screen. It displayed an email from Thomas Westbrook himself, sent just moments ago, instructing Vincent to follow Tom Harrison's recommendations regarding Natalie Brooks. Vincent's eyes widened. I don't understand. How did you get the owner to send that so quickly? Who are you? Someone who believes people deserve second chances, Tom replied. Someone who remembers what it's like to struggle and be judged. Now I believe you have a conversation to have with Miss Brooks about her new position in the training program. As Tom left the office, Vincent stood frozen, his mind racing. The email was real. The owner had personally intervened. But how had this mysterious regular customer made that happen? Unless Tom Harrison was not just a customer at all. Hope returns. Natalie looked up in surprise when Vincent called her into the office. She expected termination papers. Instead, Vincent explained, in a voice that sounded strained, that she was being enrolled in the restaurant's advanced service training program, a 6-week intensive course that usually cost thousands of dollars and was only offered to management candidates. I don't understand, Natalie stammered. After what happened, I thought I was fired. Vincent cleared his throat. Let's just say you have an advocate who sees your potential. Don't make me regret this decision. As Natalie left the office in shock, she saw Tom sitting at his table, calmly eating his salmon. Their eyes met, and he gave her that same small, knowing smile. Natalie walked over to his table, her heart pounding. That was you, wasn't it? You did this somehow. Tom set down his fork. I simply pointed out what should have been obvious to everyone. You're valuable, Natalie. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. But how did you get Vincent to listen? He was ready to fire me. Tom's expression grew mysterious. Let's just say I understand how this business works. Now, I believe you have training to prepare for. Don't waste this opportunity. As Natalie walked away, her mind spun with questions. Who was Tom Harrison, really? How did he have the power to change her manager's mind so completely? And why did he care enough about a struggling waitress to intervene at all? The answers would come soon enough, in ways that would change both their lives forever. 6 weeks passed like a dream Natalie could barely believe was real. The advanced training program transformed her understanding of hospitality from simple service into an art form. She learned wine pairings from sommelier Christine Park, who had trained in France for a decade. She studied table management with Roberto Martinez, who could orchestrate a 100-seat dining room like a symphony conductor. She absorbed menu knowledge, customer psychology, crisis management, and the subtle details that separated adequate service from exceptional experiences. Through it all, Tom Harrison continued his regular visits to the Golden Terrace. 3 times a week, without fail, he would appear for lunch or dinner. He never sat in Natalie's section anymore since she was in training, but she always felt his presence. Sometimes she would catch him watching her practice her wine presentation or observing how she handled a difficult simulation scenario. His eyes held something she could not quite identify. Pride, perhaps, or recognition. The mysterious connection. Natalie's mother noticed the change during their evening video calls from the hospital. You seem different, sweetheart. Lighter somehow, despite everything. The training has been incredible, Mom. I'm learning so much. And they're paying me during the program, which I still can't believe. Natalie paused, then added carefully, "There's this customer, Tom. He's the one who somehow convinced Vincent to give me this chance. I think he might be more than just a regular diner." Her mother smiled knowingly. "Have you asked him?" "Every time I try, he changes the subject. It's like he's hiding something, but I don't know what or why." "Maybe he's just a good man who saw someone worth helping," her mother suggested. "Those still exist, you know. Your father was one, before the world got too heavy for him to carry." The mention of her father made Natalie's chest tighten. He had left when she was 12, unable to cope with the pressure of providing for a family. She had spent years angry at him, but lately, struggling under her own impossible weight, she had begun to understand how people could break under circumstances beyond their control. The final test on the last day of training, Vincent gathered the 3 program participants in the private dining room. Natalie and 2 other servers, Marcus Chen and Yolanda Phillips, stood nervously as Vincent explained their final evaluation. "Tomorrow evening, we're hosting a private dinner for some of our most important clients. Each of you will manage a section of 6 tables. Your performance will determine your permanent placement in this restaurant. Excellence means promotion to senior server with increased pay and benefits. Failure means returning to your previous position or, in some cases, termination." Natalie's stomach knotted. After 6 weeks of hope, everything still balanced on a single night. Marcus and Yolanda looked equally tense. They had all worked impossibly hard, and now their futures would be decided by one service. That evening, as Natalie prepared to leave, she found Tom waiting in the lobby. He wore a dark suit tonight, more formal than his usual attire. Something about his posture seemed different. "More commanding. Natalie, do you have a moment?" She nodded, curious and slightly nervous. Tom led her to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the staff and lingering diners. The question that changes everything. "I wanted to wish you luck for tomorrow," Tom began. "You've worked incredibly hard these past 6 weeks. You should be proud of yourself. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your help, which I still don't understand." Natalie took a breath and asked the question that had been burning inside her for weeks. "Who are you really, Tom? And please don't deflect this time. I deserve to know." Tom studied her face for a long moment, something like sadness flickering in his eyes. "You're right. You do deserve to know." He pulled out his wallet and handed her a business card. Not the simple one he had given Vincent, but an official one with embossed lettering. Natalie read the card, and the world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "Thomas Westbrook, Chief Executive Officer, Westbrook Hospitality Group." She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "You're the owner. You've been the owner this entire time." "Yes." "The mysterious billionaire who everyone was terrified would show up. You were already here. You've been here for months." Natalie's mind raced back through every interaction, every conversation. Why? Why would you pretend to be someone else? The painful truth, Thomas? She could not think of him as Tom anymore. Gestured to a bench, and they sat down. His expression carried a weight she had not seen before, the burden of secrets finally being released. 23 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. Actually, I was worse off. I was homeless, sleeping in my car, working 3 jobs just to eat. I had dreams of opening a restaurant, but I had nothing. No money, no connections, no hope. His voice grew distant with memory. There was this diner in South Boston. Terrible location, worse food. But the owner, an old woman named Betty Chen, gave me a chance. Let me work in her kitchen even though I had no experience. Taught me everything. Natalie listened, transfixed. This was not the story the business magazines told. They wrote about his genius, his vision, his ruthless business sense. Nobody mentioned Betty Chen or sleeping in cars. I worked for Betty for 5 years. Learned every aspect of running a restaurant. When she got sick, she sold me the diner for $1. $1, Natalie. She believed in me that much. Thomas's eyes glistened. I built my first real restaurant from that foundation. Then another. Then another. 20 years later, I own 16 establishments worth hundreds of millions. But you forgot where you came from, Natalie said softly, beginning to understand. Thomas shook his head. No, I never forgot. But I stopped seeing. When you build an empire, you start viewing everything from the top. Profit margins, efficiency ratings, customer retention statistics. The people who actually make it all work become numbers in a report. Employees, not human beings with lives and struggles. The wake-up call. 3 months ago, I got a letter from the daughter of one of my servers at my Chicago location. Her mother, Claire Robertson, had worked for me for 8 years. She died of a heart attack in the restaurant during a dinner rush. The daughter's letter destroyed me. She wrote about how her mother had been exhausted, working double shifts to pay for her son's college. How she had asked for reduced hours, but was told if she could not handle the workload, someone else could take her position. How she died surrounded by strangers who stepped over her body to reach the exit. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. That's horrible. I didn't even know it had happened. My regional manager handled it, sent flowers to the funeral, moved on. When I read that letter, I realized I had become exactly what I swore I would never be. A boss who saw profit instead of people. Someone who would have fired Betty Chen's version of me without a second thought. Thomas stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Boston streetlights. So I decided to go undercover. Visit my restaurants as a regular customer, see what really happens when the owner is not watching, experience my own establishments the way my employees and guests do. The pattern revealed. The Golden Terrace was my 4th location. I've seen things at each one that made me sick. Servers forced to work through injuries because they could not afford to miss a shift. Kitchen staff bullied by head chefs. Managers more concerned with impressing me than supporting their teams. And customers, wealthy customers who treat service workers like they're invisible or inferior. He turned back to Natalie, and she saw genuine anguish in his face. Then I watched you drop that wine glass. Watched you fall apart under pressure that should never have been that intense. Watched people laugh at your pain. And I saw myself 23 years ago, one mistake away from losing everything. So you saved me, Natalie whispered. I gave you the chance Betty Chen gave me. Nothing more. Everything you accomplished these past 6 weeks was your own doing. The training just provided the opportunity. The emotional reckoning Natalie stood, anger suddenly flaring in her chest. But you lied to me. Every conversation we had, you were pretending to be someone you're not. Do you know how that feels? I trusted you. I thought you were just a kind stranger who understood struggle. Instead, you're a billionaire playing dress-up to ease your guilty conscience. Thomas accepted her anger without defense. You're right. I lied by omission. I could offer excuses about needing to see the truth, about how people act differently around wealth and power. But the simple fact is, I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. Why now? Why tell me tonight? Because tomorrow you'll be evaluated, and I need you to know the truth before that happens. I won't be involved in the decision. Vincent and the training supervisors will assess your performance without my input. Whatever happens tomorrow, you earned it yourself. Thomas stepped closer, his voice intense. But I also told you because over these past months, watching you fight so hard for your mother, for your future, for your dignity despite everything thrown at you, Natalie, you reminded me why I started this business in the first place. Not for money or status, but to create places where people could find the same second chance Betty gave me. There's something else, Thomas continued, his voice quieter now. Something I didn't plan on and probably shouldn't say given the power dynamic between us. But you deserve honesty. He took a breath. I've developed feelings for you. Real feelings. Not because you work for me or because I helped you, but because of who you are. Your strength, your compassion, the way you treat everyone with genuine kindness even when you're exhausted and afraid. You're remarkable, Natalie. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. Of all the revelations tonight, this one shocked her most. Thomas, I don't know what to say. This is all so much to process. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for a response or putting pressure on you. I just needed you to know the complete truth. After tomorrow's evaluation, regardless of the outcome, I'm going back to being fully public as the owner. No more undercover visits. This chapter ends. But I wanted you to understand why I did this, and what you've meant to me. The long night Natalie left the Golden Terrace that night with her mind spinning like a cyclone. She took the subway to the hospital and sat with her mother until visiting hours ended. Her mother, who had weathered her own share of hardships, listened to the entire story without interruption. What are you going to do? Her mother asked when Natalie finished. I don't know. I'm angry at him for lying. But I also understand why he did it. And the feelings he described, Mom, I think I've been developing them too. Even when I thought he was just Tom Harrison, regular customer, I found myself looking forward to seeing him. Feeling safer when he was around, her mother squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, life rarely gives us simple choices. Sometimes the right path is complicated and scary, but I'll tell you what I've learned in 54 years. Actions matter more than words. Thomas Westbrook could have observed your struggle and done nothing. Instead, he gave you an opportunity. That speaks to his character, regardless of his methods. What about the power imbalance? He's a billionaire. I'm a waitress. You're a woman who fought through impossible circumstances and came out stronger. That makes you his equal in the ways that matter. The money is just details. The final service. The next evening, Natalie arrived at the Golden Terrace 2 hours early. She prepared her section with meticulous care, checking every detail 3 times. Marcus and Yolanda did the same, the 3 of them working in focused silence. The private dinner would host 18 guests, 6 tables split between the 3 servers. Vincent had explained these were major investors and restaurant critics whose opinions could make or break establishments. As the guests began arriving, Natalie felt surprisingly calm. 6 weeks ago, she would have been shaking with anxiety. Now, armed with training and confidence earned through hard work, she moved through the evening with practiced grace. She navigated a wine pairing issue at table 2, handled a dietary restriction crisis at table 4, and turned a complaining guest at table 6 into a delighted fan with patient attention and genuine care. Halfway through the service, Natalie noticed Thomas enter the restaurant. He wore a full suit tonight and made no attempt to hide his identity. Several guests recognized him immediately, their conversations shifting to excited whispers. Vincent practically vibrated with nervous energy, but Thomas simply took a seat at a corner table where he could observe all 3 sections without interfering. His eyes met Natalie's across the dining room, and he nodded once. Not instruction or pressure, just acknowledgement. You've got this. The moment of truth. The service concluded 3 hours later without major incident. Marcus had stumbled slightly with a complex order modification, but recovered well. Yolanda had been technically perfect, but lacked warmth in her customer interactions. Natalie felt she had performed solidly, though not spectacularly. Time would tell if solid was enough. Vincent gathered the 3 servers in his office while the guests finished dessert and coffee. You all performed admirably tonight. We'll be making our final decisions over the next few days, and we'll notify you by the end of the week. As they filed out, Vincent called Natalie back. Miss Brooks, a moment, please? Natalie's heart sank. This was it. Despite everything, she had failed, but Vincent surprised her with a slight smile. Mr. Westbrook would like to speak with you. He's waiting in the private dining room. The full-circle Thomas stood by the window when Natalie entered, his silhouette outlined by the city lights beyond. He turned as she closed the door, his expression carefully neutral. You were exceptional tonight, he said simply, composed, skilled, and genuinely caring with every guest. That's the combination that builds a great restaurant. Thank you. The training helped immensely. The training provided tools. You provided the heart. Thomas walked closer, stopping a respectful distance away. I want to offer you a position. Not here, but at a new restaurant I'm opening in 6 months. It's a complete restart built on the principles Betty Chen taught me. Fair wages, reasonable hours, profit sharing for all staff, and a culture that values people over perfection. Natalie's breath caught. You're offering me a job at a new restaurant? Assistant manager. You'd help build the team, shape the culture, ensure we create something genuine. It comes with a salary that would cover your mother's treatments and then some. Full benefits, housing assistance, and the opportunity to grow into a general manager role within a year if you excel. The choice tears welled in Natalie's eyes. 6 weeks ago, she had been dropping wine glasses and begging not to be fired. Now a billionaire was offering her a management position that would solve her crushing financial burden. It felt impossible. Why me? She whispered. You have experienced managers. People who've been in this industry their whole lives. Because you understand struggle. You know what it means to work yourself to exhaustion for the people you love. You have the compassion and resilience this industry desperately needs. Thomas's voice grew softer. And selfishly, because I want to see you succeed. I want to watch you build something meaningful. I want to be part of your story the way Betty Chen was part of mine. Natalie wiped her eyes. What about the feelings you mentioned? The complications? Those are mine to manage, not yours to worry about. If you accept this position, we'll maintain completely professional boundaries. I'll be your boss, nothing more. Your career advancement will be based solely on merit, and there will be clear oversight to ensure no favoritism or impropriety. He paused. But if you don't accept, if you choose a different path, and if someday in the future, when the power dynamic no longer exists, you wanted to explore what might exist between us, I would be honored by that possibility. The new beginning Natalie thought of her mother in the hospital bed, fighting for every breath. She thought of the past months of fear and exhaustion, of dropped glasses and cruel laughter. She thought of Tom Harrison sitting at his corner table, seeing her when everyone else just saw a clumsy waitress. And she thought of Thomas Westbrook, a man powerful enough to disguise himself and humble enough to remember where he came from. I accept, she said firmly. The job, I mean. The rest we'll figure out later, if there's ever a later. Thomas smiled, genuine joy breaking through his careful composure. Thank you. You won't regret this. I have one condition, though. Name it. When the new restaurant opens, I want a picture of Betty Chen somewhere visible, and a plaque explaining what she did for you. People need to know that empires are built on kindness as much as ambition. Thomas's eyes grew bright with emotion. Done. Absolutely done. 6 months later, the grand opening of the Second Chance, named for Betty Chen's gift and the philosophy behind it, was everything Natalie had dreamed a restaurant could be. The staff, carefully selected for their character as much as their skills, moved through the space with pride and purpose. Fair wages meant people could pay their bills without working themselves to death. Profit sharing meant everyone invested in the restaurant's success. And the culture of respect meant servers, chefs, and managers treated each other like the team they were. Natalie's mother attended the opening. Her cancer in remission, thanks to treatments that were no longer a crushing financial burden. She sat at the bar, watching her daughter command the dining room with confidence and grace. Thomas caught Natalie during a quiet moment between the dinner rush. You've exceeded every expectation. This place is special because of you. It's special because you remembered where you came from, Natalie replied. Not many people with your success would have the humility to go undercover and face uncomfortable truths. I had a good teacher, he smiled. Betty would have liked you. As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Natalie found herself standing beside Thomas on the restaurant's small patio, looking out at the Boston skyline. 6 months of working together had deepened their friendship while maintaining professional boundaries. But something had shifted recently. A growing awareness that the power dynamic had evolved into something closer to partnership. The investors are talking about expanding the second chance concept to other cities, Thomas said quietly. They want you to lead the development. Full creative control. Natalie turned to him in shock. Really? Your vision for what a restaurant should be, it's revolutionary and desperately needed. He paused. Of course, that would mean traveling together frequently. Working even more closely. I wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable with that before I agreed. Natalie studied his face, seeing both the powerful businessman and the man who had sat at a corner table watching over a struggling waitress. I think I'd be very comfortable with that. In fact, I've been thinking lately that maybe, once this new role is established and I'm clearly succeeding on my own merit, we might explore that conversation you mentioned. The one about what exists between us. Thomas's smile could have lit the entire city. I'd like that very much. The true ending 1 year later, the second chance had expanded to 3 cities, with 4 more in development. Natalie managed the growth while maintaining the core values that made the concept special. Her mother, healthy and strong, had moved into a beautiful apartment paid for by Natalie's success. And Thomas and Natalie had carefully, thoughtfully, begun building a relationship grounded in mutual respect, shared values, and genuine love. They stood together at the ribbon cutting for the Chicago location, built on the site where Claire Robertson had died 3 years earlier. Her children attended the ceremony, and a memorial plaque honored their mother's memory along with Betty Chen's. Everyone laughed at the waitress, Natalie said softly, remembering that awful night with the wine glass. They saw someone beneath them. Someone disposable, Thomas took her hand. They couldn't see what I saw. Strength in the struggle, dignity in the effort, someone worth believing in. You gave me a second chance when I desperately needed one. No, Thomas corrected gently. I gave you an opportunity. You created your own second chance through courage and determination. That's what makes you extraordinary. As the crowd applauded and the new restaurant opened its doors, Natalie realized her story was not about being saved by a billionaire. It was about saving herself, with support from someone who remembered what salvation felt like. It was about kindness rippling outward. From Betty Chen to Thomas Westbrook to Natalie Brooks to countless others who would work in restaurants built on compassion rather than cruelty. The waitress everyone laughed at had become the woman everyone admired. Not because circumstances changed, but because she refused to let circumstances define her. And in the process, she had helped a billionaire remember his humanity and built something meaningful from the ashes of her darkest moment. That was the real story. Not rags to riches, but struggle to purpose. Not rescue, but partnership. Not an ending, but a beginning that would echo through every life they touched for years to come. The end.